Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another webinar hosted by Sustinere. My name is Elsa Sundqvist. I'm a partner and senior expert at Sustinere and leading the development of our services. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining. So Sustinere, as you hopefully already know, we are a pan-Baltic sustainability advisory firm. We've been operating almost 9 years already, and now in 3 Baltic countries. We have experience in a lot of different sectors with a lot of clients, as you can see the numbers here as well. And we're really happy that we can share different insights throughout the webinars now quite regularly with you guys as well. So as I said, we've had quite a few webinars already, and they've been on different topics, focusing on climate change or supply chain issues or ESG strategy building, for example. But today is a little bit different, and I'm super happy that today we can share the results of our now already 9th annual reporting study. And the aim of this study has always been to provide some insights into the reporting maturity and practices of the largest countries in the Baltics, largest companies in the Baltics. But now this year we actually have gone a little bit further, and we're zooming also into different practices and targets that companies are actually setting. And the aim is to be like a valuable benchmark for Baltic companies, and that to make this reporting study really a good insight into the sustainability practices in the Baltics. To zoom into the reporting study, I will be soon joined by Mari-Liis Kolk, who's the strategy and reporting lead at Sustinere, and she will give a overview of the results of the reporting study that we've conducted. And secondly, she will also give insights into like the practices and targets, as I mentioned, that we are zooming into a little bit more in depth this year. In between Mari-Liis' presentation, we will also be joined by Indre Pienorav-Čvene, who is the sustainability manager at IKI Lithuania, a retail company in Lithuania then. And she will give us like practical insights and some tips and kind of overview how and why this reporting practice is actually a useful tool for the company, and how to then make the reporting as clear and reader-friendly as possible. Once we have gone over the reporting study results, we will also zoom into some options for different reporting formats and frameworks, because we know that a lot is changing in the reporting landscape, whether it's due to different obligations or like changing obligations or stakeholder expectations as well. So we will dedicate the last 10 minutes to looking at different opportunities in order for you to decide which reporting approach will be most useful for you. And we will have some helpful tips there as well. And we'll try to wrap up the webinar around 11 o'clock. So hopefully it will be a good and fruitful 1-hour discussions, but also really interesting insights from the reporting study by Mari-Liis. But without further ado, I would like to give the word actually right away to Mari-Liis to zoom into the results and give us an overview where the Baltic countries are at the moment in their reporting practices and maturity. Go ahead, Mari-Liis.
Thank you, Els, and hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be introducing the results of our freshest study. So as Els mentioned, we've been doing this for a long time. A study on reporting has been conducted at each year that Sustinere has been operating, and the focuses have been shifting year on year. The methodology has changed a bit every year according to what is currently going on in the market. Last year, at the same time last year, we were really in the pre-omnibus era. Compliance was the most hot topic. And last year we were really compliance focused in our assessment, which means that we really scored the reports based on their transparency, not necessarily looking into what their actual practices are. But this year, once the reporting landscape has really changed, we have shifted our focus into more practicable actions so that we could have a localized view of what are countries on our market doing, because there are a lot of benchmarking tools, but usually Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania are left out of there. So we have really developed a unique overview and database. Unfortunately, today we don't have a lot of time, so I can only present you the maybe less than half of what we found out during the study, but we will publish the whole results next week. So everyone who has joined on StreamYard will get an email notification, and for everyone else watching on LinkedIn, you will see it from social media. But let's move on. So our sample each year has also been a bit different. Mostly we have looked at the top 100 companies in each Baltic country that we did this year as well. Last year, for example, we looked at almost all companies that were in the scope of the CSRD. But this year we went back to the top 100 list, and the top 100 list is determined by the annual turnover, assets, and number of employees of the company. And we took the top 100 in Estonia, in Latvia, and due to limitations of our internal resources, we couldn't make the top 100 list for Lithuania, but Lithuania is included on the list of stock companies. So we took all the companies that were listed on the Baltic main list and secondary list at NASDAQ. And on the right side, you can also see the split in the whole sample. So in total, we had 220 companies. Most of them were local to the Baltics. There is a split with foreign listed and public companies as well. There are some exclusions. So we only included reports that were published by July 2024. So if the companies have a different financial year or the reports were not published at the right time, they were excluded. And we did assess one group level report if, for example, there were overlaps between the country lists, or some companies clearly state that they consolidate under their parent company. So this is just for the background. And this year we were quite innovative in our data analysis as well. So as usual, we have been conducting this analysis manually. This time we assessed a total of 73 data points, of which 10 were scored. And we picked the data points to be scored on the basis of if they are applicable for everyone. So these are the data points that assess the clarity, transparency, and completeness of the report. And then we marked 63 data points, and these were the data points that assess topic-specific matters that may not be relevant for all. But everything marked counted towards the final score as well, just to see how thorough the report is. And then after we had identified reports who talk about actions, we conducted an AI-assisted assessment. So we did a semantic search and extracted specific actions and targets. So this means that there may be, of course, some exclusions here as well due to some formatting issues or unusual wording, but overall, through the validation of the results, I think it was pretty accurate. But what is interesting about the methodology, I'm sure you're all excited to go into results, but what really puzzled me and our team was how to define what actions and targets actually are. And I think it really comes out as an interesting issue when you're writing the report as well, or when you're reading it and trying to find out, okay, what is the company actually doing? Is what they state just words? Is it very generic, declarative, kind of leaves an impression that they do something, but is it actually an action? So we did our best, but I think all of the actions identified are not actionable or specific on the same level. As always, a most important note, we made assessments only on the basis of the information disclosed in the reports. So we are not actually assessing the level of sustainability of the company or how sustainable the companies are. I'm sure there are many who don't report who are sustainable in their operations, but we can only assess what we see. Now let's get on to the results. As has been the trend for many years already, the best results are among the listed companies. For financial year 2024, this is quite obvious also because it was the first year that many of these listed companies were in scope of the CSRD. So this means that the reports were audited. They had to have a lot of depth, a lot more than was required previously, but this doesn't mean that the rest are doing any worse. So as we see, publicly owned companies, so state companies, are performing pretty well as well. What is interesting here is that in the Latvian sample, public companies are actually even ahead of the listed companies. And as usual, foreign companies that operate here in the Baltics are usually bigger than the local companies, and therefore they also have more maybe stakeholder interest or more reasons to report with depth. And unfortunately, our local companies have on average the weakest results, but really looking at the content, they are developing as well. So ESG disclosures are quite common. So in our sample of 220 companies, I think 146 actually reported some kind of sustainability information. For some, it may have been just one paragraph, but it is quite common to say something about sustainability. However, it is still a fraction, about a quarter, who report very clearly in clearly divided sections. So it is easy for the stakeholder who's going to read the report actually to recognize that this is where I find the sustainability information. And for the first time, we looked at the length of the reports as well. This has been studied also in other studies that have come up on the market, for example, from EFRAG, from Sustainability Reporting Navigator. They, of course, only assess the audited reports, and we have also separated the audited and not audited reports here. And what is quite clearly visible is that the report length does grow with audit, but I would say it is quite reasonable. So the highest peak in audited reports is around 60 pages, which is still quite the average number, because if we look at the rest of the European companies' audited report lengths, they are a lot longer. And why this is maybe important to talk about is that there's been a lot of criticisms how sustainability reports are a bit difficult to read, quite difficult to comprehend. So it would be easier for the readers if we were very specific, concrete, and precise. But I think the Baltic market is doing quite well on that matter. And as we see, the regulatory pressure is guiding the selection of frameworks. So quite as expected, the European frameworks are the most popular in our whole sample. So ESRS and EU taxonomy are reported on the most, but there are also some GRI, CDP, and SASB in the mix. Some companies also use more than one framework, actually. They combine them. And what was maybe most interesting was that we didn't detect any VSME reports. Els will tell you about the VSME reports a bit later on in the seminar, but the VSME standard, so the standard for smaller companies in Europe, was already out by the time last year when the company started reporting. So it could have been an option, but I think in the light of compliance obligations that were a lot stronger in the pre-omnibus era. Companies maybe didn't really consider that yet. What I'm really happy to see that sustainability is making it to general business strategy. So over a half of the companies who reported some sustainability information also demonstrated how sustainability aspects are linked with their general business strategy. And more than half of the reporters also disclosed how ESG oversight is applied in their company. Many reporters also base their reports on materiality. In the context of the ESRS, of course, we talk a lot about the double materiality, and it is quite common. So 75% of them who made a materiality assessment did it based on the ESRS, but there are, of course, other methodologies applied as well. For example, GRI also has a materiality, or some have just made their own kind of assessment. And I would really say it is an essential part of reporting. It doesn't necessarily have to be ESRS based, but the selection of topics gives your report focus. So sustainability is such a wide topic, and you cannot report on everything. I think everyone who's done a materiality assessment has felt at some point that everything is important, and it may as well be, but some things are for sure more important than the others. But what is interesting is that the resilience analysis that also comes from the ESRS, but doesn't have to be limited to it, is quite generalized. So a quarter of the reporters actually do disclose how resilient their business models are to risks and opportunities that they experience in the market. But around 83% of them do it in a very generalized manner. So I think only 7% provides a deep overview of their resilience across more topics than just climate. What is lacking is stakeholder transparency. So only 45% of reporters have actually presented an overview of their stakeholders, and only 32% have included a description of their stakeholder interests. So the exact points, how they overlap with their stakeholders, what their stakeholders could expect of them, how they engage with them. And this is something also that we actually scored in our methodology, because we consider it essential for everyone, regardless of the framework used. And before we get on to the interview, here is a list of locally owned and listed companies who got results over 50%. There are quite a lot of Latvian companies here. So in general, Latvian companies reported less sustainability information, but the ones who did reported it very well. But of course, in the total list, usually the foreign-owned companies are a bit more ahead. So here you can see a selection of the best ones from them as well. But now I will give it over to Els, and later you will hear more specifically about what kind of targets and actions our companies actually applying.
Thank you so much, Mari-Liis. I think it's really interesting to know that more than half of the companies who we looked into, that for them sustainability is becoming like part of the business strategy even. But then it's interesting that there's still like disparity between the actual structure, or that there is a lack of like unified approach. And I guess it is that a lot of companies are maybe a little bit, that they see this like ESRS level reporting a little bit too excessive, and then are trying to fit the sustainability information into some annual report, like different parts of the annual report. But I hope that in the beginning of the webinar, we can show different approaches, how you could actually still have a structured view to the sustainability information in a way that fits your maturity, but also kind of the purpose of the report. And that could help you to have like a great overview of your sustainability progress to help strategically take it forward as well. But we will get back to this as well. But now I would just like to invite Indre from IKI Lithuania to the stage as well to have a discussion about their sustainability reporting practices. And just a quick intro as well. IKI is a retail company in Lithuania, and they have been voluntarily disclosing their sustainability information for 3 years already, and have really done a holistic approach and a very good and reader-friendly, in a really good and reader-friendly format as well. You didn't see IKI in the IKI's logo now in the amongst the companies that we just showed, but it's also just because IKI was not in the sample this year. But I really recommend to look into the report for some inspiration how to actually present the information and look at kind of the ambition that one retail company could have as well. But hello, Indre, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, hi, nice to be here.
When we looked into the reporting study, more specifically, and the results we can present next week to all of you interested as well, we saw that the companies in the wholesale and retail sector, they are actually reporting the least on their sustainability-related actions. IKI, however, has been doing it for quite a few years, and it is really a strategic element for your business as well. So how would you say is sustainability something that is a good differentiator for the market, or to what extent do you think it is an important business strategy kind of direction for you guys?
I don't think that having a report makes a very big difference in terms of the, society, our customers, or the public overall. But I do think that it's very important for ourselves. And if we say that, okay, sustainability is important, this is something that we work on, that we want to improve in our company, I think that in such case, then sustainability report is a must. For me, it's always a bit weird to read some statements, maybe by the CEOs of the companies, that claim that sustainability is very important to them and speak about certain initiatives or changes that they do, but then they don't have a sustainability report. So I can't really check, let's say, the data maybe behind it, or are they doing this, let's say, some initiative because it's an issue for them, where do they stand on it, how they have been performing in the last few years on that topic. So I think that, it's very important for internal motivation and integrity maybe.
And transparency then, I guess, to actually be accountable for the statements that you have regarding sustainability, right?
Definitely.
But you said that it is an important tool internally, and kind of to have an overview for yourselves and be transparent about your practices. But is it a stock taking tool as well? So you can actually kind of then, through the sustainability reporting and gathering the data and putting it all in one holistic format, let's say, is it something that helps you to actually then plan ahead, look at the strategic overview? How much do you use it for internal kind of stock taking?
We definitely use it. One of the ways how we use it is in our communication, actually. Mm-hmm. So our communication colleagues sometimes rely on it when they want to, let's say, if they want to bring some story or discuss some of our achievements in the field of sustainability, they look at the report. Not always, of course, because the report is still on the last year. But it's still a source of information for them. So that it's also very good to for ourselves to see how we've developed, how we improved, or maybe where we failed. So it's a very good overview to understand
a great monitoring tool then.
And we had actually a discussion, to be honest with you, whether we need to have such an extensive report with our management. And so I'm not saying that it must be that long or that extensive overall, but we had a discussion overall, and this was one of the arguments that especially for the management and for internal communication, it's very good tool to gather, to be accountable and transparent, as you said yourself. right? To and have this information in one place.
Yeah, very interesting. I think quite often actually this like internal communication or like giving this internal like overview for the internal stakeholders as well, it gets kind of lost in this like compliance questions and in general like how the report should be published and so on, and how like long or let's say flashy it has to be. But actually it is a very important way to communicate also internally and like give the progress overview as well. Very interesting. But although I said that it's not always like important to have a flashy, interesting report, but I think that IKI's report is very reader friendly. So in a sense that it's very like concise. You have a very good overview between like different elements, and you can like connect them or like cohesively go through the same elements in the report. So I think it's really, really reader friendly. Is there like also a specific stakeholder group externally that you are trying to like approach or address with this reader friendliness, or who do you think it should most talk to this report externally?
We are trying to make it reader friendly. And to be honest with you, I think the reason why our report is maybe a little more reader friendly than other CSRD reports is because we are not fully compliant. So we have the luxury because it's like a kind of, we voluntarily do this, right? So we kind of allowed ourselves to maybe have some information that is not actually, mandatory or being asked by CSRD. And some of the information we kind of opted out and did not provide, which I think was too extensive. It was mainly some descriptive information on, meetings with the board, or what topics were discussed or something, how often, how long the meetings took and everything. So
Sure.
I'm exaggerating a bit, of course, but I do think that the current list of disclosures is a bit too extensive. And so let's say, we do have some gaps definitely and areas for improvement from the disclosures perspective, but this is what allowed us to make the report a bit more user-friendly.
So you approached it from kind of your needs and not even maturity, but kind of the needs and what the focuses were for you.
Yeah. Regarding the readers or who this appeals to, I think it's mainly it's my personal opinion and experience maybe, but I think it's still sustainability community. So it could be, our competitors, other companies that are looking either for, I don't know, inspiration or wants to understand the market, experts, maybe journalists that are doing some kind of research, and preparing for interview with us. So I think it's very difficult to, how to say, make our general customer read the report. Maybe we should use other tools, and we try to do it, other communication channels to communicate about our sustainability initiatives, but probably not the report. Our colleagues read it as well.
Okay. Yeah, so there can be like to maybe approach or get an attention of different stakeholders, you would also need different like mediums for that, right? So whether it's just an online communication or some other initiatives. But let's go into a little bit about into the reporting process as well, and some like practical tips. So in your 2024 report, you have brought out your materiality analysis, but you did that in parallel with actually preparing the report. So the report itself is not based on the materiality results yet, but just more like a general overview or like some focuses. But I wanted to know, how did you actually approach setting the focuses or these disclosure themes without materiality? Because from the reporting study, it shows that materiality really matters and companies like approach it through that. But what are these alternatives? If you don't do like a full ESRS materiality, how did you approach it then?
Yeah, so the reason why we did it like that is very simple, just lack of time, I guess, or maybe not very good preparation, because when we decided, that we want to do this, and when, all the confirmations went through and all the tenders and et cetera, we, we realized that there won't be enough time for us to do the materiality analysis first and then do the report. And at the same time, we did not want to wait another year.
Sure. Yep.
So the reason behind this is it's very practical. Regarding my experience with such approach is very how to say it wasn't difficult or it wasn't challenging for me. I do think that materiality assessment is a good tool, but maybe not for sustainability manager. Like if materiality assessment is something that's very eye-revealing and eye-opening and reveals a lot of new information, maybe you have not been with the organization for a long time, or you do not know it very well. So for me, the results were not something completely new, and we did compare the results of the materiality assessment with the with the topics that we chose to disclose, and there was a match. I don't know how many percentages, but it was, let's say, a relatively high match.
But you approached it within like kind of like sector overview, or you took this like focuses like based on the sector standards, or how did you then approach, or kind of just went through your practices and structured it like this?
So we looked, at the topics that we were disclosing in the past, because it was not our first report, right? So we kind of already, and we had some materiality assessment done in the past, so not double materiality, but let's say more maybe generic one and high level one. So we already knew which topics are important for us to disclose. So we took that. Then, of course, we looked at overall market and other retailers, what they've disclosed, because there are some publicly traded retailers that were already, let's say, issued or announced some of the reporting information and materiality assessments. Yeah, overall best practices and general understanding of our business and CSRD disclosures.
Yeah,
common sense.
Yeah, common sense makes sense. You said that you had a little bit like freedom to decide which then elements to disclose or kind of how to approach the report. And what do you think are the elements that make, or some other tips that make the sustainability report reader friendly and also like useful tool internally and in external communication? What are some of the like specific disclosure points or different elements that you could bring out?
Overall, I think that the numbers are help, or let's say the numeric data helps reader to get the image, like the picture and understanding of what's happening in the company. So let's say where we had the numbers, we disclosed it. We did not, let's say, decided to not disclose some numbers if we had it, because that really helps, I think, to get an understanding. Yeah, but the qualitative information sometimes, as I mentioned, I think is too much and maybe not necessary, and it's difficult also to compare with others, let's say, right? Because that's one of the reasons why the SRSS standards were approved, to ensure that comparability, and it's easy to compare numbers, but with qualitative data, it's a bit different story.
But you guys are also bringing out this like sustainability highlights from a year in like different topic areas. So I guess it's also something that makes it kind of like unique to you guys, really shows your approach and like helps a little bit with like getting the feeling what the company specifically is doing, like these type of additional elements.
Yeah. For those that haven't read our report, at the beginning of every chapter, we do have sustainability highlights, which are the initiatives or changes that we are the most proud of.
Okay, great. I think this is also like one thing that definitely helps to bring a uniqueness and like some recommendation that I would give to other companies from your report as well. But of course, a lot more. It's a very comprehensive and comprehensive report, but in general, like also your practices are then comprehensive. It's not only about the reporting, right? But thank you so much for joining us today and sharing quick insight into your practices and your views about why you actually are giving out this comprehensive report. So thanks a lot and good luck with the next reporting period and in general with the strategic initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me and for helping us as well.
Yeah, thanks. And now we can continue with the results again. So I'll give the word back to Mari-Liis to really give an overview of the actions and the targets that companies are setting and taking.
Thank you, Els, and thank you, Indre, as well. I think, Indre, what you told us really represents a very reasonable approach. Of course, as you mentioned, not everybody has the luxury, but more and more companies in light of the omnibus have the luxury to really go step by step, because quite clearly compliance is a big exercise. But I think even without the need for compliance necessarily, just for the first time adopting a standard and starting the reporting can be quite overwhelming. So I would also really encourage anyone who's considering whether to report or not to really do it step by step. And I think based on our data, what is interesting is that in Latvia, we see more of this all or nothing approach, but the Estonian reports represent more of the middle ground of, I don't want to say cherry picking, but starting where it's possible, starting where it's the easiest maybe, and then moving on to deeper and deeper disclosures each year. But let's see about the actions and targets. What was really interesting and quite delightful to see is that those who report on sustainability also tend to act on it, or at least this is what is reported. So 41% of the companies in our sample disclosed some information about sustainability actions. And only 11% of the reporters who talked about actions as well as targets remained at a declarative level. So it means that they maybe addressed the importance of a topic to them, but they didn't really back it up with any actions or reflections on how they're actually doing in this area. And 30% of companies, which was quite surprising to me, who disclosed sustainability actions also linked the actions to their financial information. So meaning maybe the investments made to enable the action or just the operating expenses. So this is also part of the ESRS, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to ESRS reporters, because it is one way to really show that you're taking the matter seriously. Here is an overview of the topic coverage, actions and targets across the reporter. So you see the count of individual companies who reported on, for example, climate change. And then in the light green, also the number of individual companies who had actions to back up their claims as well as targets. So while environmental topics are among the most reported, with climate change and circular economy in the lead, we have overall most actions in the social area, actually. So here you see the individual companies, but the amount of actions in the social dimension is a lot higher. And I think it's interesting also that with some topics, we really see, for example, own workforce. Whoever is reporting on the topic also has done something, but it's not the case with every single topic. So, for example, even with climate change, we have a large number of companies who recognize the issue, which is already a step further from nothing, but not everybody is doing something about it, or at least they're not disclosing what they're doing. We also see a difference in sectors. So the difference here between countries is not that obvious, but really some sectors are in the lead. As expected, the financial sector reports one one of the most actions and has the highest share of reporters in their sector who have some actions, which is what you see on the graph on the right. Energy and utilities sector is right behind them, and construction and real estate are quite high up as well. What is interesting is that manufacturers report overall most actions, but it is quite a few companies who do this. So we really have some leaders who are doing a lot. They are transparent about it, but most of the companies in the sector are quite silent. And as Els mentioned before as well, wholesale and retail by the share of companies in the sector is also one of the most maybe shy ones. But the intensity of actions is also something that gives us a maybe different look. So manufacturing and energy really stand out as clear readers. There are most actions reported in these sectors, and the numbers per company reporting are also quite high there. Wholesale and retail, ICT and transport are the ones that have a strong engagement among a smaller group of firms, meaning the companies do a lot, but there's not that many companies who are transparent about it. And construction and healthcare remain in the early development stages, where the coverage of topics is quite good, but the structured programs are still emerging. We also divided the actions into types of actions. And what we see from here is that most actions are administrative, and administrative actions were classified as policy creation, exercising oversight, some controls, creating reporting channels. So we did our best to identify only either creation or actual application of the practices, not, for example, just the existence of the policy, but I'm sure some of those got in there as well. So we really see it is more prominent in some topics than others, but administrative actions are the most common, which I think could be quite expected, because a lot of companies last year were really trying to do the materiality assessment, trying to understand what kind of mechanisms they need to create to support the growing demand from their clients, for example, for information. So this has really been the focus. But the two widest sections, next ones, are technological and training and capacity building. So technological really mostly represents, I think, climate solutions. So we're talking about energy efficiency, changing of equipment, things like that. And there's a lot of training and capacity building. I think this is something that companies actually report on anyway, even if they don't do it with the direction of sustainability, but training their own workforce, the learning opportunities that they offer them is quite something that I think a lot of companies feel good about publishing. But I think it also highlights that in order to go deeper with sustainability, it also needs some skill development in the companies as well. Target setting is, as expected, and it's quite normal, is not as popular as acting. There's nothing wrong with that, but happy to see that 75% of companies who report on actions have also set at least one measurable target. So one measurable target overall. This doesn't mean that they have a target in every topic, but at least one. And on average, there's 2 targets per company, but of course, the average doesn't say much. There are companies who have actually set targets for everything material to them, and there are some who have set a lot less. Measurable targets are mostly environmental, which I think is quite expected. The lowest number of targets we see in the governance area. And in the governance, when we talk about business conduct, prevention of corruption, so on, the targets are mostly about keeping a baseline. The targets there are mostly reflecting on the hygiene, for example, 0 tolerance for any non-compliance incidents and 100% of coverage on corruption prevention training, so on. So these are often not the targets that the companies set for a specific year, but it is a baseline that they want to keep throughout. Accountability for results is quite likely also growing. So 30 companies in our sample disclosed that they apply remuneration schemes in their management connected to ESG results. And compared to last year, it's not fully comparable because we had a bit different sample setup. But last year, only 20 companies mentioned the topic. So this doesn't mean that they applied it. And having a small sample this year, I think it speaks for the fact that there are some steps taken further in this topic. But let's look at 2 specific topics as well. We have made specific overviews for each sustainability topic in our report as well that you can read next week, but some highlights. Climate change mitigation was, with no question, the most popular area where companies are setting targets. And I was quite surprised that we found 36 net zero or climate neutrality or carbon neutrality targets. That is quite a big number in the sample size, especially in the Baltics. And on the graph on the left, you can see for which years are the companies aiming to achieve this. Many have also set specific scope 1 or scope 2 targets, or for smaller categories with some interim targets. And what I'm also happy to see is that we identified 22 companies who are either in the process of setting the Science-Based Targets Initiative aligned targets or have already set them. And 7 of them are local to the Baltics. So it's not always foreign companies putting emphasis on that. And from the governance area, we see that market pressure towards suppliers is the highest from the financial sector, but it is also quite a lot discussed in the energy and utilities sector. So actually, with green on the graph, you can see the share of companies in the sector who include ESG in terms of purchase. Many times it is about human rights, social topics, general compliance, but actually more and more some companies are selecting their suppliers based on their climate ambition or their targets in that area or their efforts in that area as well. And I was quite surprised to find that some companies are even requiring their suppliers to report on sustainability. So this requirement is not very common. I think the expectation to do so is more common, but some actually have set it as a requirement. And in the gray, you can see who request specific ESG information from their suppliers. And in orange, you see who have set targets connected with their suppliers. And it is not just demands on suppliers. Many companies also support their suppliers with training, with specific educational materials, and really this one-on-one communication. So it is not just bureaucracy. Although I would like to continue because we really have identified many interesting insights, I have to finish and let Els give you an overview about how to approach your own reporting but really keep an eye out for the whole published study because I think it gives quite good insight into sector-specific practices and inspiration as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mari-Liis. Indeed, super interesting. And I also know that there's so much more in the full report. So indeed, keep an eye on that next week. But as Mari-Liis said, I wanted to now go forward with showing what are the different reporting options for like picking the right approach for you guys. But just to maybe highlight one thing that I noticed from Mari-Liis' results as well was just the target setting part. That it's interesting that the companies are still, or maybe not still, but they're not setting very specific targets yet, although they're acting in a lot of areas. But I think the baseline and kind of this risk management perspective is still quite logical that the companies are at that level. But as Mari-Liis said, the financial sector pressure is quite strong. And I think that explains a little bit also the focus on climate change, since everything to do with like climate risks and the financial costs coming with climate change for the financial sector is so important. So kind of like shows the market focuses and that climate is still one of the main topics that different sectors are focusing on, and where companies are taking these like more ambitious maybe steps ahead. But now going on with the reporting options. So we know that there is a freedom now to pick the type of reporting format that you that fits your company and that would actually help you to convey your sustainability story in the best fit to purpose way. So we of course have an option for companies to report fully on the ESRS and be a CSRD compliant, give out the CSRD compliant report with full double materiality, giving all the methodology, showing your strategy and business model connections, disclosing everything with policies, actions, and targets, all of the KPIs that are relevant, and also bringing in the methodology and entity-specific elements. So this is still an option for everyone who wants to go that way and have a very holistic and very transparent reporting approach. And of course, for those who this is still compulsory. But then there are also different approaches that I think for companies who are not compliant anymore, they might feel that they need to pick a different format and to be a bit more free, as Indre also said in our discussion, could be useful. So of course, we have also this voluntary European Union backed standard, let's say then, the VSME for small and medium enterprises, and the one that is becoming like a kind of market minimum standard and expectations from the market, and that would allow you to disclose all sorts of like overview about the policies, actions, and targets that you have in terms of different sustainability topics, and bring out the compulsory KPIs related, like that are in the standard as well. But our recommendation to give actually like a more holistic, reader-friendly approach and something that really shows the focuses and the highlights and helps for you to take stock, be an internal communication tool, and so on, would be this VSME Plus. So for a little bit larger companies and the ones who are already slightly more mature in their sustainability approach, we recommend this like in-between VSME Plus, as we call it. So there, the focus or like the focus setting element would still be a simplified double materiality, or the DMA Light, as we've called it before, and are approaching it. So it helps you to really set the focuses. But we don't need to have a full scoring, full methodology, but it helps to know what you're talking about. And it's maybe not relevant, as Indre said, for the sustainability manager themselves, but for the internal and external communication to show what the focuses are and why you are approaching your sustainability journey as you are. Then you could also bring out the strategic overview, how you actually approach sustainability, to show kind of the ambition level and overall approach as well. Then we recommend to also disclose the policies, actions, and targets that are related to these topics that are in focus for your company, and to bring out the KPIs that are really relevant for the topics that are material for your company. So now we're not talking about these compulsory KPIs, but something that is very entity specific and actually shows the shows the progress and the sustainability focuses that you have. Because as Indra mentioned, the numerical data is really important and helps to actually show the progress. So I think the more entity specific we can go, the easier to actually understand the progress and communicate it as well. So these are the three formats, and our recommendation for these companies who do not need to comply with CSRD would be the VSME Plus. But of course, there's also other ways to communicate your sustainability steps. So indeed, as Indra again also said, that for some stakeholders, it would be more relevant to actually look into present the information in an online format. So we could support in the sustainability communication in other ways as well. So whether to focus into a specific topic or show some highlights, progress. Also, I think it's interesting if companies show some failures that they have not maybe reached the progress that they aimed, and be transparent about it and show the reasons behind it. So there's different ways in different formats, and of course some of them, with online communication and the reporting structure, they can also be combined, and in that way you can approach different stakeholder groups who might find some specific things interesting in your sustainability strategy, for example. So these are the different formats. I understand that it's quite a lot, so maybe it will be difficult for companies to understand which one to then actually approach. And for this purpose, we could help you with two different services. So, for example, we have now come to the market with a service sustainability reporting navigator. So this will be a quick 1-hour review session where we can help your team to see what type of, how mature you are in your sustainability reporting practices, and based on that to help to identify which of these formats or frameworks actually fit you the best. And the outcome of this session would be then the understanding which of the reporting formats to go, and also you could see the high-level structure and the key elements that this type of reporting would require. So this would be one helpful tool, how to help to make the decision and to see where you actually position in the reporting landscape. Second thing is now that since we have a great benchmark data available for us now through this reporting study, and we can develop it further, we also offer a sustainability benchmark navigator to see, based on this study sample, but also it could also be extended to see where your company positions compared to industry peers, and help to see what type of actions or targets, for example, even could be useful for your company as well. So it is like a benchmarking workshop session where we could look into the over 3,300 actions that we have identified through the study, and try to interpret them in terms of the market trends, the performance levels, and how they fit actually your company, and help to then position your steps, your sustainability ambition, and also help to find the next actionable steps. So this is the benchmark navigator to really position you compared to the peers and give some practical input for next steps. These two services here, I've brought out the pricing as well, but we have a small surprise or an offer for everybody listening here today and tuning in maybe later as well, that we would like to offer these one or the other service for free for the first 10 who register via info@sustinere.eu until November 30th then. So if you would like to test out either the reporting navigator or the benchmark navigator with the study sample, then please get in touch, and we can look into your maturity either then from the reporting perspective or strategy building perspective through one or the other navigator services then. But if you would like to also go further with the benchmarking and extend the sample with very specific companies or kind of even regional perspective that is relevant for you, then we could extend the sample through the and run the AI tool for your sample as well, and that would be kind of the extended sample navigator practice then that we could offer. So please do get in touch if this seems something that is interesting and relevant, valuable for you at the moment. Other than these navigators, we of course can support you with other reporting related and in general sustainability related services as well. But when it comes to reporting, there's always a gap analysis that companies could find useful to see what level their reports are or their sustainability practices. We could support you with sustainability advisory, or reporting advisory, but also report writing, but even the full report creation together with design, editing, and translation. If you find that some other type of online or sustainability communication could be useful for you, please turn to us as well. And if indeed you also see that materiality is something that helps to set the focuses, then we're here to help with either full DMA analysis or the DMA Lite or the simplified version. So all sorts of sustainability and report-related topics, please do turn to us and see whether we can be useful in your sustainability journey. And if you would like to get more overview of other webinars that we've done, please look at our website. The previous webinars are all up on Sustainaire's website, and there will be new ones coming up starting from January already. So keep an eye on the social media as well on your emails. And this is it from us today. And thank you so much for joining. And I hope you found the insights helpful. And if you want to know more, then please do look into the reporting study that is available from next week onwards. Thanks a lot and have a great day.